Council, and I will call the meeting to order. We'll start with roll call.
T. Erickson.
Here.
Lambert. Stunek.
Here.
Bevins.
Here.
W. Erickson.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Here.
Okay, that brings us to the next item, which is the approval of the agenda. Alderman Bevins.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to add something to the item on the bonding for the park board, and that's a discussion on Mayor Mank's email that I hope you all got a copy of. I don't know if it needs to be a separate item, but I do want to make sure we do discuss his email. Do you need that to be a separate item?
I think we can discuss it before making any motions. I think that's fine without adding an item.
Thank you. So I move to approve the agenda.
Lambert, second.
A motion by Bevins, a second by Lambert to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote by roll call.
T. Erickson.
Yes.
Yes.
Stunek.
Yes.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
U. Erickson.
Yes.
And Johnson.
That motion carries. Next up is the consent calendar. Notice to public, all matters listed are considered routine by the council and will all be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. Good cause is shown prior to the time the council votes on the motion to be adopted by roll call.
Move to adopt, Bevins.
Lambert, second.
You want something?
Second by Lambert. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote by roll call.
T. Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert.
Yes.
Yes.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Bevins.
Yes.
U. Erickson.
Yes.
And Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. That brings us to the next item on our agenda, which is number 5, the Community Member of the Month, Mayor Badeau.
All right. So it is the first of the month, and as we'll be doing moving forward is we will be giving out a Community Member of the Month award. This is something that we started last year, and we're going to try and make it a regular thing and make sure we're getting them out every single month. But this month, a gentleman named Brandon Toole, who is a fine gentleman that I have had the pleasure of meeting, and he was nominated by the Park Board, or excuse me, sorry, Parks and Recs Department, for cleaning up the Buffalo Hills Trail. So on May 2nd, Brandon, with his son and friend Lindsay Winterfeld, were out of the goodness of their hearts, walked along the Buffalo Hills Trail and picked up trash. As the park department writes, we feel that this gesture is worth sharing with the city as Community Member of the Month. For he reached out to us, not to say, look what I did, more to make sure that the garbage truck was there to pick up the trash on Monday. And I don't believe that Brandon is with us tonight. He said that he had to take care of his young son. But I spoke with him over the phone this afternoon, and he wanted to express his gratitude for the award and wanted to say that he didn't clean up the trash to get an award. He cleaned up the trash because he felt like it was the right thing to do. And he was surprised and, in his word, wowed by being praised for doing so. So this is really what these awards are about. They're about looking out for citizens in our community that are doing the little things and that are doing them not to win awards, not to try and get praise, but because they think it's the right thing to do. And we really want to thank Brandon for that. And so this month, June of 2020, wonderful Brandon Toole is our Citizen of the Month.
Thank you, Mayor. Jennifer.
Mr. Mayor, and Connie, if you could share, we have a great picture in the packet. So thank you.
Yes, as you can see, the garbage is sold.
Mrs. Lambert, thank you, Brandon, for doing that.
Thank you, Jan. Anybody else want to comment on the community member of the month?
Great job.
Moving on to number 6 on the agenda is council committee reports. A, Personnel and Finance Committee, Alderman Pritchett.
Boy, I was hoping this month to be quicker than Kelly with his committee, but he kind of scammed out of it somehow. I had to do a double take when I looked. All right, we have 5 motions coming out of the committee. The first one is the approval of bills, and I so move.
I second it. Stunek.
A motion by Pritchett, a second by Stunek to approve the bills. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote by roll call.
T. Erickson,
Yes.
Lambert,
Yes.
Stunek,
Yes.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
W. Erickson,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. Alderman Pritchett.
All right, that takes us to item 2, which is the resignation of Officer Dalton Langer. And the motion coming out of committee is to accept Officer resignation with regret, effective May 14th. I so move.
And second, Erickson.
Pritchett, a second by T. Erickson to accept with regret the resignation. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, there's just a little bit. He was on step 2 of field training. This will leave the police department with 5 vacancies. And so the good news is the last person on the old eligibility list only needs to take the post test and they might be able to fill that position. And then the police department will be formulating a new eligibility list. Situation tonight.
Are there any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll vote by roll call.
T. Erickson, T. Erickson,
Yes.
Lambert,
Yes.
Stunek,
Yes.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
W. Erickson,
Yes.
Johnson.
Carries. Back to Alderman Pritchett.
All right, item 3 is to authorize the sale of retired police vehicle unit number 424, utilizing the Central Minnesota Dealers Auction. And I so move.
Second.
Motion by Pritchett, second by Stunek. Any discussion?
It's a 2015 Chevy Tahoe. If anybody wants a car, all right.
We'll vote by roll call.
T. Erickson,
Yes.
Lambert,
Yes.
Stunek,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
W. Erickson,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. Alderman Pritchett.
All right, item 4 is to authorize the firehouse to apply for a grant through the Firehouse Sub Public Safety Foundation. The application request will be approximately $21,934, and I so move.
Second,
We have a motion by Pritchett, a second by T. Erickson. Alderman Pritchett.
All right, there's no match to this, so it'll cost the city nothing. The money's going to be spent on extrication equipment. The reason this is so soon, Fire Chief Holmstad, he had already applied for this, but that's why it kind of came onto the agenda so quickly. And that's it.
Mr. Chair, this is Lambert.
Yeah, Lambert.
The Firehouse Sub, is it Firehouse Sub the business here in Baxter? Or is this something totally separate? Firehouse Sub, is that the business?
Tim Holmes, can you answer that?
Yeah, Mr. President and Council, yeah, that's correct. Firehouse Sub is a new sub shop that went into Baxter 6 months ago or so.
I have to thank them for this opportunity.
Thank you, Jan. Any other discussion? None, we'll vote by roll call.
T. Erickson,
yes.
Lambert,
Yes.
Stunek,
Yes.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
W. Erickson,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. Alderman Pritchett.
All right, so our 5th item coming out of committee is The council moved to reduce the remaining 9 months of liquor license fees. That would be from July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021 by 50%, and continue to waive the fees of businesses who do not open until they do open. And I so move.
Second, Stunek.
We have a motion by Pritchett, a second by Stunek. Alderman Pritchett.
All right, there's a little bit more on this one. So in April, we decided to waive the fees from March through May. And then what happened on May 26th, the county decided to reduce their liquor license fees by 50%, and they'd already waived the fees for 4 months. So we'd be matching pretty much. What's different is we kind of discussed, so if I've got business A doesn't open, not charging them the fee, like if they're not open in June, not charging them the fee. So if they open July, those months would be prorated at the 50%.
So would they pay zero until they open?
Yes.
50% for the months they're open between June 30th.
Yes, and kind of my looking at this is there might be some businesses that aren't sure if they can hold off. We're not sure what the governor's going to do, and having to pay all those fees up front might cause them to close and never open. Because if they pay those fees now, and if they don't open, that could be the final nail in their coffin.
Right. Is there any other discussion or question on the motion?
Mr. Chair, this is Lambert. Sorry to be stupid, but it seems like from July to June is more than 9 months.
That's when the liquor license runs. So we've already waived those fees for 3 months, and that's why it's 9 months. If I got that correct. If I didn't, Finance Chair Hillman, please correct me.
Yeah, Connie.
It's just that the liquor license goes from July 1st through June 30th. When council did their action in April, rather than refunding all of our license holders, we applied it to the July 1st, 2020 renewal.
Okay.
So in essence, we took that 9 months and said, okay, you already got 3 months forgiven. So now we're gonna, that's where we get the 9 months from.
Okay.
Permits and licenses are recognized in the year that they are received. We don't recognize them over the period that they actually are for.
Okay. No, thanks for the clarification.
Other discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote by roll call.
T. Erickson,
Yes.
Lambert,
Yes.
Stunek,
Yes.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Bevins,
Yes.
W. Erickson,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. Alderman Pritchett.
End of report.
Thank you. That ends the Personnel and Finance. Next is Safety and Public Works. Kelly Bevins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have no agenda items this evening.
Thank you. That brings us to number 7, unfinished business. Call for applicants. Mayor Badeau.
My gosh, hold up. We've got a shutdown situation here. And I apologize. Computer malfunction. I blame the user. So we have multiple requests, excuse me, for applicants. Cable TV Advisory Committee, 1 term expiring 2021, 2 terms expiring 2022. The Charter Commission, 2 terms expiring 2020, 1 term expiring 2021, 1 term expiring 2022, and 1 term expiring 2023. We also have the wonderful September 7th of said year Economic Development Authority, 1 term expiring 2020, as well as the Water Tower Committee.
Thank you, Mayor Badeau. That brings us to 7B, appoint community members to the Region 5 Children's Museum Task Force. We don't really have a mayoral or council president appointment on this since it's a new thing. So after talking with City Administrator Bergman, we just thought all the council members received all of the applications. We can just vote here and we all name our top 3 out of the 5 applicants, and the top 3 overall vote getters will be appointed to the commission. Is that clear? Are there any questions or any disagreements with doing it that way?
Not, Mr. President, this is Lambert. So can we give you all three at the same time, or we're going to do one each individually?
Jennifer will do a roll call. You will name all three of your names
Okay,
when it's your turn.
okay, thank you.
And let me get these names pulled up. I don't have my packet open here. Well, I guess I go last anyway. So if there are no questions or concerns, Jennifer, you can start with the vote.
All right. I will start with T. Erickson.
I'm actually in the same boat. I need to get my names up here. One moment I would ask for, please.
You bet.
Is there 4 or 5?
There are 5 applicants, and the applicants are Cynthia Askeruth Olson, Mandy Dents, Amy Gunlock, Katrina Wood, and Shane Riffle. As you may recall, the council opened it up for another 2 weeks to see if we could get a Brainerd resident. Although Shane Riffle doesn't live in the city of Brainerd, he is the CEO of the YMCA. So all 5 applicants do not reside in the city of Brainerd. Ben Erickson, you just let me know when you're ready.
All right, I am ready. I've got Cynthia, Mandy, and Shane.
Lambert.
I have Shane, Amy, and Mandy.
Stunek. Alderman Stunek.
My fault. Cynthia, Mandy, and Shane.
Alderman Pritchett.
Cynthia Askeruth Olson, and Shane Riffle.
I'm sorry, I missed the middle one.
Mandy Dens.
Thank you.
Ditto on Stunix.
Alderman Bevins.
Thank you. Askeruth, Olson, Dens, and Ripple.
W. Erickson. And Wayne, you're muted.
I have Olson, Dens, and Shane.
And got it, Johnson.
I have Cynthia, Mandy, and Shane.
Mr. Chair, the results are Cynthia Askeruth Olson with 6, Mandy Dens with 7, Amy Gunlock with 1, and Shane Riffle with 7. Are Cynthia Askeruth Olson, Mandy Dens, and Shane Riffle.
Excellent. Thank you for doing that, Jennifer. This went a lot easier than as easy as it possibly could. So that is good news. So will you, Jennifer, will reach out to the 3 candidates and say they've been appointed and work on getting a task force meeting moving along, correct?
I will. I actually already had Peter Olson reach out to me to find out where we were at. So I would anticipate they'll be probably scheduling a meeting here within the next 2 weeks.
All right, thank you. Going to the next item on the agenda, 7C, City Hall Fire Update. Paul.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the council. We started this process last Wednesday at the special council meeting, and thanks to our attorney Langel, we avoided getting into some issues with not doing something we're supposed to and voting on something. So to kind of get everyone back in the loop about what's been going on. So on May 18th, City Hall experienced a fire on the roof of the building. The contractors were working to demo the existing materials like insulation and roofing. a fire ignited on the roof. City staff in the building received a phone call from a bystander at Mid-Minnesota as the alarms weren't going off in the building. Very little smoke in the building, and at the time the alarms were in test mode because of our HVAC contractor being down in the basement doing soldering on some piping. So staff was able to basically cover all the desks and recover all the computer hardware and files before any kind of water intrusion happened from the extinguishing of the fire. Staff went through and assessed the damage after with the state fire marshal's office, our insurance agent, the League of Minnesota Cities, and a third-party investigator were on site on the next Tuesday to look at the damage and begin the investigation as to the cause. Also at that meeting were the insurance adjuster for Thielen Heating and Roofing and their third-party fire investigator, along with our construction manager, Kevin Curie from Contagion Group. So when we all were up on the roof, everyone was kind of looking at it. No determination that day was made. There wasn't clear. Both sides had their thoughts on what the fire started with, and so there wasn't a determination that day made. And so what ended up happening is the league instructed the city to hire a third-party contractor to come in and put a temporary roof structure on the building with the impending rain that was supposed to come that Friday. So Wednesday was more or less kind of a planning day between staff and the third-party contractors, which consisted of Service Master, McDowell Roofing, and High Tech. Thursday, the temporary roof structure was installed on the building, and Friday, we were all sealed up for the impending rain coming that weekend. On Friday afternoon, the city was notified by Thielen that their insurance agency was taking responsibility for the fire on the roof. And so with that, the day after the fire and the day of the fire, we had Service Master in the building extracting the carpeting, which was wet from the extinguishing of the fire. Other damages within the building consist of having all the, we're gonna have all the full ceiling tiles replaced. The carpeting will have to be cleaned, disinfected, and there's a protective coating that'll go back on it. They've been ozoning in the third floor to try to get rid of the smoke smell on the third floor and the second floor. Other things that took place, there was on the road, there was burned roof trusses that were burned to the point where they needed to be repaired or replaced. There was some charred roof decking. As part of the investigation, staff hired a testing agency to test the roofing materials for the presence of asbestos. There's an underlying amount of vermiculite insulation between the wooden roof deck and the concrete roof deck, and also the actual roof decking itself. The test for the vermiculite came back negative for asbestos. However, the roof decking came back as positive. With that, the league instructed the city to hire an abatement company to remove, at a minimum, the damaged roof decking materials and all of the vermiculite insulation. The vermiculite insulation, even though it's not asbestos containing, with it getting wet as it did, the league and Service Master both were in agreement that that had to get removed so the drying process could take place both from the third floor and from above on the concrete roof deck, because that concrete soaked up so much water that it's having issues drying from just the bottom side. I kind of went over all the damage on the inside of the building. We're continuing to work with our adjuster and the Thielen adjuster to get those damages figured out. And with that, one decision that staff is requesting that the council consider tonight is to take a look at removing all of the roof decking that contains asbestos. As you can see, we got a quote from an asbestos abatement contractor, $13,800 to remove the vermiculite insulation that would be fully covered by the insurance agencies, and approximately $2,780.77 of the roof decking removal will be covered. The remainder of the roof decking, that would be the responsibility of the city that was not damaged as part of the fire, is an additional $11,679.23. Staff feels that this is an opportune time to remove this material and not have it to be an issue in the future when it needs to get re-roofed again. The contractors were on site today to begin the asbestos abatement and the re-roofing on City Hall. We narrowly avoided another catastrophic rain event this morning, as you all saw the big storm come through. Had a temporary roof tore off when that cell came through. We were able to get plastic down. There was a minor leak, but it was in one of the areas that was damaged already. So that's not anything out of the ordinary, I guess, when you have a roof open when it's raining. So with that, the one thing I guess staff would like the council to consider is that we remove the additional non-damaged roof decking that contains asbestos as part of this item. So with that, I can answer any questions, or I think Tim Holmes can also answer anything about the day of the fire or anything the council wants to know more about.
Can't do anything.
We hear you, Gabe.
You hear me?
Yeah.
Oh. Everything's freezing up on me. Oh, I'm connected again. My lights are all yellow. I thought I was losing you, sending it to Kelly. So Paul, I think, explained everything rather well. I think we're just kind of looking for a motion to spend up to $12,000 out of the probably it would come out of the fund, just the project.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. President, it's the contingency basically on the project, the 15% that's budgeted for as part of the remodel.
Okay, thank you.
I think Kelly had a question.
No, I was going to make the motion, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
I was just waiting for you to, finish your chips. I move to spend up to $12,000 and remove all the bad roof decking and the money to come from the project fund in Eisenhower.
Stunek, second.
A motion by Bevins, second by Pritchett. Is there any discussion?
I do have a question.
Kelly.
I appreciate the fact that the contractors, insurance company will be reimbursing us for the portion of the roof that they're taking responsibility for, but what started it? Was it smoking in the boys' room again? What started it?
You know, that's up in the air yet. That was the original thought, is that there was evidence of smoking happening on the roof. Phelan's guys were the last ones up there before they left for lunch, and so that is the thought. But the investigation was not completed. The state fire marshal, I don't believe, Tim, has issued any kind of anything, unless you've heard something different, Tim.
Mr. President, Council, no, I haven't got a final report from them, but that's the suspected cause at this point.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions of Paul or Tim? Seeing none, we'll vote on the motion to remove the type A insulation. Roll call.
T. Erickson.
Yes.
Lambert.
Yes.
Stunek.
Yes.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Bevins.
Yes.
W. Erickson.
Definitely yes.
And Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. That brings us to D, COVID-19 update. Jennifer.
Chair, members of the council, so there really isn't a whole lot to update from the previous city council meeting on May 18th. Prior to the fire, we had every intention of coming back to the city council with a plan to reopen City Hall. However, after just hearing Paul's report and still needing to continue to dry the third floor and also to get the smoke smell out of the third floor, there are a lot of fans and dehumidifiers running throughout all of City Hall. So at this point, we're just recommending that we continue with our previously adopted stay-at-home work plan until the repairs have been adequately repaired to City Hall so that we can safely open to the public. I will note one thing in the stay-at-home work plan. Chief McQuiston did point out that actually the police records management techs, all 4 of them, are reporting to the police department. So they are working, they're reporting to work and not working from home. So with that, Mr. Chair, we hope that when we come back on June 15th, we'll have some kind of plan to be able to facilities.
Thank you. Do you know when we'll be meeting in the council chambers again?
I'm going to throw that to Paul.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. When the fire happened, we were actually in the middle of renovating the council chambers. And since that time, it's kind of pushed everything back. We're anticipating the HVAC startup on Wednesday this week. None of that equipment was damaged, which we're very lucky in that circumstance. There was some light fixtures that got damaged on the 3rd floor. And so, my gut intuition says that June 15th would be the earliest, but I would expect the first meeting in July would be a safe bet for the so-called first meeting back in the council chambers, because that would really be pushing the schedule pretty hard to get that put back together in time.
Thank you. Any other questions about City Hall or COVID? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. I got ahead of myself here. That's going to be 7E, final reading and public hearing of proposed ordinance 1503, an ordinance pertaining to a petition of annexation of property ID 411700508. So we'll start right now. I will open the public hearing at 8:03, and let's unmute the call-in users. Oh, should I have had David Jansky explain this again first? I wasn't sure.
Again, Mr. President, I can do that really quick. Just a reminder to the council and to the public. This is an annexation request from Robert and Andrea Marone at 11427 EP Street. This is to annex an unaddressed parcel. The president listed earlier, immediately adjacent to their own property, which is in city limits. Essentially, it's from staff's my perspective, it's an unbuildable lot. They're just looking to add some more space to their lot. The council held the first reading of this ordinance on April 20th. Per state statute, a 30-day notice was given of this public hearing, which is being held now. That actually gave 42 days for notification. After this public hearing, the council will hold the final reading of this ordinance and then vote to adopt this ordinance. And then there's some administrative things that must be done, including notifying the state demographer and things like that to make this officially final. So this is pretty much the city saying, yes, we want to take that, we will agree to take them in, and then we have to go through the state to finalize.
All right, thank you. Now that we know what it is we're holding a public hearing about, I will open the public hearing at 8:04. Let's unmute the call-in users. And if any of the call-in users are here to discuss proposed ordinance 1503 pertaining to the annexation of property 411705508, please say your name and address. Is anyone here to speak about this ordinance? Is anyone here to speak about this ordinance? Seeing nobody, we will close the public hearing at 8:05, and I'm ready to hear a motion to hold and dispense with the actual reading. Kelly Bevins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we dispense with the final reading of proposed ordinance number 1503.
Second.
Motion by Bevins, second by Pritchett. Any discussion? No, we'll vote by roll call.
T. Erickson,
Yes.
Lambert,
Yes.
Stunek,
Yes.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Yes.
W. Erickson,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. Looking to adopt the ordinance now.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adopt proposed ordinance 1503, providing for the annexation of certain properties located in Oak Lawn Township, Crow Wing County, in the city of Brainerd, Crow Wing County, Minnesota, pursuant to Minnesota statute 414.033, and I so move.
Lambert, second.
Motion by Bevins, a second by Lambert. Any discussion on adopting the ordinance? None, we'll vote by roll call.
T. Erickson,
Yes.
Lambert,
Yes.
Stunek, Stunek,
Yes.
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
W. Erickson,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Yes, motion carries. That brings us to item F, the final reading of proposed ordinance number 1507, an ordinance amending city code section 421 Uniform Fire Code. Is Tim or somebody going to present this?
Yeah, Mr. President, this is Tim. Nothing to change from the first reading. Again, it's just bringing our ordinance up to the 2020 fire code with some added appendixes relevant to how we operate in Brainerd.
Thank you, Tim. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to dispense with the final reading of proposed ordinance 1507, an ordinance amending Brainerd City Code, section 421, Uniform Fire Code.
Stunek, second.
Motion Bevins, second Stunek. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote by roll call.
T. Erickson,
Yes.
Lambert, Stunek,
Yes.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
W. Erickson,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Yes, motion carries. Looking to adopt the ordinance now.
Mr. Chair,
Bevins.
I move that we adopt proposed ordinance 1507, an ordinance amending Brainerd City Code, section 421, the Uniform Fire Code.
Second.
Motion Bevins, second Stunek. Any discussion? Outside of the mayor being back, welcome back, Mayor. Seeing no discussion, we will vote by roll call.
Has to hide the beautiful hair.
I can take the roll, Jennifer.
You got it. T. Erickson,
Yes.
Lambert,
Yes.
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 Evans,
Yes.
W. Erickson,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Yes, motion carries. Brings us to item number G, the final reading and public hearing of proposed ordinance number 1508, an ordinance amending section 900 animals. We want to explain what we're doing here before the public hearing? Connie?
Again, thank you, Council President. This ordinance, nothing changed from the first reading. It's just basically we are making our ordinance be what we have done in the past when we're getting animal license, as well as making it be workable with our new software. Basically getting rid of the color of the dog, that we can just view the rabies tag, and I can't remember what the third thing is, but that's the color of the dog. We haven't attached the vaccine, and they no longer have to sign the affidavit.
Okay, I'm willing to, well, I'll hold the public hearing. We'll open the public hearing for this ordinance at 8:09. Let's unmute the call-in users. If any of the call-in users are here for the public hearing on proposed ordinance 1508, related to section 900 animals, please say your name and address. Is anybody here to speak about ordinance 1508? Is anybody here to speak about 1508? Seeing nobody, will close the public hearing at 8:10, and I'm looking for a motion to dispense with the actual reading. Kelly Bevins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move that G is a letter, not a number.
That's out of order.
All right, then I'd like to move the final reading of proposed ordinance 1508, amending section 900.03, subdivision 2A of the city code, section 900 animal.
Second, Lambert.
Motion Bevins, second Lambert. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote by roll call.
T. Erickson,
Yes.
Lambert,
Yes.
Stunek,
Yes.
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
W. Erickson,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Motion carries. Now we'll need to adopt the ordinance.
Lambert, so move.
Second, Pritchett.
Motion by Lambert, second by Pritchett to adopt ordinance number 1508. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote by roll call.
T. Erickson,
Yes.
Lambert,
Yes.
Stunek,
Yes.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Evans, W. Erickson,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. That'll bring us to item number 7, letter H, the final reading and public hearing of proposed ordinance number 1509, an ordinance amending city code sections 515-37 signs. Shansky, you want to update us on this?
Yep, Mr. President, just again, a reminder, this is just changing the wording of this code. Instead of saying that non-commercial speak signs cannot just blanket saying they cannot be in the right of way, we're actually giving some better guidance and listing it being shall be placed no less than 15 feet back from the curb. Again, this is just to make it easier for the public. They can easily measure that than trying to figure out where their property line ends and the right of way begins, and try to avoid any potential right of way violations.
Excellent. With that, I will open the public hearing at 8:12. Let's unmute the call-in users. Any of the call-in users are here to speak for or against proposed ordinance number 1509. Please say your name and address. If you're here for 1509, please say your name. Is anybody here to speak about proposed ordinance number 1509? Hearing nobody, we'll close the public hearing at 8:13. And looking for a motion to dispense with the actual reading. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to dispense with the final reading of proposed ordinance number 1509.
W. Erickson, second.
A motion by Bevins, a second by Erickson. Any discussion? By roll call.
Yes.
Lambert,
Yes.
Stunek,
Yes.
Yes.
Evans,
Yes, please.
W. Erickson,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Yes, motion carries. Looking for a motion to adopt ordinance number 1509. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to adopt proposed ordinance number 1509, an ordinance amending Brainerd zoning ordinance section 515.37.
Lambert, second. Go ahead.
Motion by Bevins, second by T. Erickson. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote by roll call.
T. Erickson,
Yes.
Lambert, Stunek,
Yes.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
W. Erickson,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Yes, the ordinance is adopted. That brings us to item number 8, new business. 8A is a resolution ordering improvement and authorizing advertisement for bids. Improvement 14-05, Old Stonebridge Trail surfacing final lift. Paul.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. So a couple of meetings ago, we set this public hearing for tonight for this improvement. This is a development that is up off of Riverside Drive. that never received the last, what we call a lift of asphalt, basically the last 2 inches on this roadway. It's not a very long segment. As you see, the project costs are estimated to be around $84,000. The Stonebridge development was originally constructed in 2004 and 2005. At the time, the final lift was never installed on the streets. Today, staff received a phone call. So there is the developer that owns a majority of the lots on Stonebridge. He received the letter for the public hearing. In conversations with him, he had stated that there was some information that he was given back when he purchased these parcels from the old owner, that there was some money put into escrow to install this final lift of pavement. Staff did not have enough time to go back and look. That being said, we can bring that report back to the council if they so choose. Kind of the decision to make tonight is if we want to continue to hold the public hearing. We're really not talking about assessments at this hearing. We're talking about whether to move forward with the improvement or not. And so to keep this project on schedule, I guess staff would still recommend holding the public hearing. Whether the money is in escrow or not would just mean that we wouldn't have to hold the assessment hearing come the fall. However, it is understandable that if the council doesn't want to move forward until we know what the funding source will be, that is also a very legitimate concern. So I guess we're looking for a little bit of guidance from the council on whether we want to just postpone this public hearing until the June 15th meeting and push the project back a little bit, depending on the outcomes of what me and the finance director figure out with this information we received.
I have one question, Paul. I mean, being that it's almost necessary to have a finished road to put that final lift in, and it's such a small project, and I think, you know, unless there are people here for the public hearing who know better than I, that we're probably going to move forward with the project. So I think we should move forward with the public hearing tonight and deal with the assessments or possible escrow money moving forward. Does anybody disagree with that?
I support that.
Okay, so then, and we're holding the public hearing tonight?
That is correct, Mr. President. Yeah, it would be the improvement hearing to hear testimony for or against the proposed project, and really not the time to talk about assessments anyways.
Right, yep.
Mr. President, this is Lambert. My question is, why wasn't it done back when it originally?
Mr. President, yeah, and that's the question I had. I would think that if we received escrow money, a lot of times the developer will leave off the final lift until homes and things are built, and then put the final lift on once the development's finished, so we don't damage the asphalt and things when we're building new houses. So that was my thought when I received that news. I don't know why we wouldn't have moved forward if we received that money during this time. And so, you know, especially when you don't see any kind of homes being built in that development, I would think that we would have moved forward and done it if we had the money. And so I think through some research, me and Finance Director Hillman could figure that out pretty quickly, along with working with, his name is Bill Goers, who is the gentleman that called me tonight. So.
Mr. Chair, Lambert again, I do feel I am uncomfortable at this time to move ahead without having that knowledge. If I'm in the minority, that is fine, but I feel that information is important. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think I had enough head nod. I think we'll move forward with the public hearing, and then we'll vote after the public hearing on it. If maybe we should revisit it later, or maybe we can move ahead tonight, because we're not talking, as Paul already pointed out, we're not talking assessments or financing tonight. We're talking about should this project be done. Does anybody else have a comment before I open a public hearing? No. So with that, I'll open the public hearing at 8:19, excuse me. If you are calling in to talk about if we should do the improvement on Old Stonebridge Trail, please say your name and address. If you're calling in on whether we should or should not do the project, please say your name and address. If you're calling in to talk about the Old Stonebridge Trail surfacing project, please speak now. If you're here to talk about the Old Stonebridge Trail surfacing project, please speak now. Hearing nobody, will close the public hearing at 8:20. Now it's time to consider testimony, and then Kelly Bevins, I'm ready for a motion.
I'll make the motion and then we can discuss the motion if I may, Mr. Chair. Yes?
Yes.
Thank you. I move to adopt the attached resolution ordering the improvement, approving plans and specifications, and ordering advertisement of bids to be opened on June 26, 2020 at 11 a.m.
Second, Pritchett.
A motion by Bevins, a second by Pritchett. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair, it's Lambert again.
Yep.
Does this improvement has to be done, whether, I mean, it's something that has to be done, that layer, isn't it, Mr. Sandy?
Mrs. Lambert, that is
Mr. President, I'm sorry, yeah.
That is the thought. Yeah, I mean, at some point, to protect our assets we already have installed, such as the curb and gutter, the manholes, everything that's kind of exposed to snow plows and street sweepers and everything, that last lift should be installed. And it's just to the benefit of the people that live there too. They're driving over a 2-inch lip on their curb and gutter every day. It probably gets a little frustrating, so.
Thank you.
Any other discussion or questions? Seeing none, we will vote to adopt the resolution by roll call.
T. Erickson,
Yes.
Lambert,
Yes.
Stunek,
Yes.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
W. Erickson,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. That brings us to potentially our last public hearing of the night. Item 8B, public hearing regarding a proposed property tax abatement. Who's taking this? Connie.
And I'll start it out. We do have Mr. Paul Simon with Baker Tilly on the phone with us. He just joined us via camera. So I'll kind of let him take over, but this is the bonds that we are proposing to issue for the Memorial Park improvement.
Mr. Chair, maybe we should discuss Mr. Meig's email.
Mr. Vice.
Yeah, Kelly, go ahead. I'm losing everything. Go ahead and take it, Kelly.
All right, thank you. I hope everybody received an email from former Mayor Meig regarding his thoughts on the bonding for this project. And basically what he says is that it's quite possible that bonding at this point might be a mistake. And his argument is that the undoubted revenue shortfall with the state of Minnesota is possibly going to reduce our LGA in the very near future. After I read this email, and I certainly have no insight into the reduction of LGA or not, although I have lived through it in the past, I do know that there was some consideration as to whether the park board wanted to move forward with the purchase of the parking lot. If you recall, I asked Parks and Rec liaison if we had an affirmative that they even wanted that. And then prior to actually moving forward with it, one of the park board members, Kevin Yeager, said that the park board had voted not to move forward with the purchase of the parking lot, which was contradictory to what I thought was the case. Today I heard that the Parks and Rec Board is considering delaying the project in another year, and possibly delaying it in perpetuity because they're considering at their next meeting dropping the recreation part of the parks program. Well, um, sort of like the parking lot thing, why would they not tell us? I don't know. But I'm hoping that maybe our parks liaison or Parks Director Tony Saylor can give us some direction in this. I certainly don't want to put the city in a compromised financial position. I support the project, but if we're going to get our LGA whacked, or the Parks and Rec doesn't even want this project, why would we move forward at this point in time? I then asked Jennifer Bergman if there was a timeliness to bonding, meaning, do we need to do this now? And we have our bond counsel on the phone with us. He can maybe help us walk through that. But I might want to hear what you all have to say regarding whether this project should move forward or no, and specifically at this point in time, having received nothing. And I remember the great presentation by Mike Higgins on the park, but I never remember the park board saying, we want this, bond for it. So they came up with a plan if we did bond for it, but I'm somewhat hesitant right now to move forward. That's all I have to say, Mr. Chair. I don't have a motion, but I'd sure like to hear some other council members' discussion and maybe some words of wisdom from our park liaison and our park director.
Yeah, let's go to the park liaison and see what he can address as far as what he knows is the timeline. And we'll go to the parks director and we'll see what other council members have to say.
Sure. So in terms of where we are in the process, tomorrow night we will be reviewing the 2 bids that were submitted via RFP for the project. And I believe the decision tomorrow is to select the firm and begin moving forward with the project. I guess I would not have said that they were looking to necessarily postpone the project, other than we have the use of the hockey rinks through next, I believe, spring, to get through that time frame. And so the thought process of it was, there's time to get it right. So the conversation that they had was not that, well, we need to wait and push this off. It was, we have time to look at this and make sure that we're doing things correctly, because it's a lot of money. So that would be my guidance from what their meetings have been. Now, Tony can speak to it as well, but in terms of time frame, that's kind of what we were looking at. You know, as far as hockey rinks are concerned, which is the big first concern with that project, warming house and getting in the rinks in time for there to be no disruption within the usage. We have that rinks, or have those rinks till the end of this coming winter season. And that would put us in position to construct in the summer and move forward.
Tony.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess this is the first I've heard that the park board is looking at postponing the project. I know, as the mayor stated, we are going to select or review the RFPs that we received and plan on selecting the company that we were going to go with tomorrow. And as far as reconfiguring the department, there's been some very vague discussion about it. Again, it's the first I've heard that anybody was thinking about cutting the recreation portion out of this. So I'm not real sure where this is all coming from. I know it is on the agenda for the meeting. It's going to be the Tuesday after this. We have another meeting, and that is on the agenda, but no park discussed that with me.
So it's on the agenda for discussion, but there has been no discussion on it yet.
There's been some very vague discussion about how other parks departments from cities our sizes, how they run things. And nobody's really come out and said specifically what they're looking at.
Okay. Then before I open up for more council comments, I'll go to Jennifer or Connie and the timeliness of the bonding. Can we wait 2 weeks? Or maybe Paul, I don't know who the correct person to answer this, kind of throw it out there. Do we need to do this tonight? Can we hold back 2 weeks to see where the park board's at? Where are we at? Jennifer?
Mr. Chair, I guess I would defer to Paul Steinman from Baker Tilly.
Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So yes, we can move the whole package out 2 weeks, and that package would be this public hearing on tax abatement and the next resolution as well, which is the adoption of the resolution to set the sale of the bonds. So if everything moved out 2 weeks, that simply means that the bond proceeds would be received 2 weeks later than they currently are planned to. I think they're planned to be received about August 6th, so we'd have to move that out 2 weeks as well. And maybe I can make a suggestion here. That's not my dog, by the way. Maybe I can make a suggestion here, and that suggestion would be you can hold the public hearing. We already advertised for the public hearing. You can hold the public hearing. You can take comments. You can open the public hearing and continue it for 2 weeks if you wanted. Then we wouldn't have to republicize the public hearing notice and some things like that. Or you can take comments. You can vote on the tax abatement piece. That doesn't mean that you're selling bonds on tax abatement bonds for parks yet, though. That's the next resolution. So, but I mean, they're tied together, obviously, but I mean, those are a couple options for you to proceed.
Okay, so then up to Connie, if we're getting the check in the bank August 20th instead of August 6th, how does that affect our ability to pay our bills?
It all kind of depends on what we receive from the county for our tax settlement in July. It does make me a little bit nervous delaying it because we have already paid for the fire truck. We've paid the $1.2 million for the fire truck. We paid the purchase price of the parking lot. So a lot of these bonds, probably, a good portion of it has already been spent. And then with Engineer Sandy working through the improvement projects, how much are we going to have to pay by August 6th would be my concern about delaying it 2 weeks. But yes, we probably can cash flow it. If we have to cash in some CDs, that kind of stuff, we could make it work, I'm sure.
Well, we don't want to pay penalties on our CD.
Well, no, but we might have to. And again, it all depends on what happens with what our tax settlement will be from the county.
Okay, so I guess open up. Or Paul, you got something more?
Yeah, maybe I could just add one item. I think, Connie, that you have already purchased the parking lot for the park. So it's important to understand this tax abatement concept. This applies to how you borrow money for parks because there isn't really a well-defined, easy way to borrow money for parks. It's not like borrowing money to do streets. It's not like borrowing money to buy equipment. So if you already paid for the parking lot for the park, which you're planning to sell tax abatement bonds for, you're going to need to have an alternate source of money other than bond proceeds to pay for that or reimburse yourself.
Okay. Mayor Bedeau, you had another comment?
Yeah, I want to follow up on what Tony said. So I'm not sure as well where the confusion about delaying the project is coming from. From the park board standpoint, there was never a decision made to not do this project or to push it off. The only conversation was that in moving forward, we should be as careful with every dollar we're given as humanly possible. And so they want to make sure that we're not just saying, oh, we've got money, let's go ahead and throw it on the ground and waste it. Let's make sure we're actually coming up with the best plan. And so how that got twisted into, where we want to hold off on this project, I'm not sure. The secondary part of it and the discussion of the structure of the parks department, that's a completely separate conversation altogether. I know we are talking about some hockey rinks that will get used for potentially youth hockey. However, this is a project that is much larger in scope in terms of what we're looking to do. We're looking to create recreational facilities for people to use, regardless if there's parks and rec programs or not. And right now, the park board is trying to figure out where they fit in this puzzle. And I think we've all had this conversation 1,000 times, anyone that cares in this group, about how our setup in terms of the way that our charter is written puts us in a strange position where you're giving the power to a group to make decisions, but yet holding them in another way by the funds not being available. So that group right now is kind of going through growing pains of trying to figure out what exactly is it that we do, what exactly are our priorities. And more than anything, what they're doing is going through every single park and doing evaluations of everything, going down to the sidewalk materials, everything, trying to figure out how is it that we create the best park system that we can possibly create. And that discussion then led into, well, what does the whole setup of the parks department mean? So the two things are related, but really it's not a tied scenario. And the idea that we want to wait on the project is just that we're trying to make sure that the pieces are falling in place at the right time. Go out for the RFP, get the bid, take it into the next phase, move it forward, knowing that we've got through this winter to get that stuff completed.
Tony.
The way the RFPs were written was that it was a two-phase project. The first phase would be completed in 2020, and that would include the warming house and the hockey rinks. The second phase, because we'd want to see how much does that cost us, and also we're waiting to see if we are receiving any funds from the outdoor recreation grant, which we should be hearing from at the most 2 weeks from now. So the idea was build the main portion of it and then look at the other amenities that we could be able to afford as far as an additional pavilion by Field 3, some trailways leading from the Mills Field parking lot to the parking lot on the west side of the property, possibly a loop around there. We've looked at potentially splash pad over there. Things like that. But the first phase initially would be 2020, which would be the warming house / pavilion and the hockey.
Okay, Jan?
Mr. Chair, if you could help me understand, when they're talking about recreation, are they taking that duty away from park and recs, or are they taking that away from the park? So can you help me with that?
Dave or Tony, I'm not sure. I did not know they had that on their agenda. Mayor Bedeau.
The discussion that's arisen has been, how are other cities of our size doing things? What is their focus? What is the structure of their setup in their department? And there are what we've come to find is that there's a lot of cities that are no longer doing the recreation part of it. Baxter does not do youth recreation anymore. There are tons of cities around us that's the case. And I think it's more just exploratory right now in that what is it that we want to see happen within the parks? And that led to the bigger discussion of, well, what does that mean for the whole picture as a total? So I wouldn't say they're looking to necessarily take it away. They're looking at all options right now. If there's a partnership with someone else, if the mode is to go to the format that Baxter uses, in which they partner with the school district, they want to look at all options before coming to a conclusion. But the idea is, let's figure out how to get the park system to where we want it to be.
So if Mr. Chair, if I'm understanding, when you're talking about recreation, you're talking about the youth sports. You're talking about basketball or baseball, softball, all of that stuff is when you're talking about recreation, correct? And that is what the difference is between us and Baxter, is that our Park and Recs handles that, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Tad, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess my thoughts are, I think former Mayor Menk brings up a valid point about concerns about a potential revenue shortfall at the state. However, hearing Connie's concerns about, not wanting to really push it back too far, coupled with hearing Paul's comments on, that we could hold the public hearing and still, we're not selling the bonds tonight, we're just holding the public hearing. I guess my opinion is to move forward with the public hearing, but, before we, take any action about selling the bonds, we need to get crystal clarity on, the park board's intentions or what they're wanting to do with this, because it just sounds like there's way too much confusion over, where is this confusion coming from? So I guess that's my thought is, from what I'm hearing.
Thanks, Tad. Kelly, you had something to say?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to hear from either Finance Director Hillman or Administrator Bergman if they've gotten any feedback from the state of Minnesota of a LGA shortfall. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Alderman Bevins, I keep looking, the Greater Coalition of Minnesota Cities is kind of on that, and I actually sent out an email a couple of weeks ago to their executive director just to touch base on what they're hearing with LGA, and I have heard nothing so far, but we'll continue to keep our eye on that. But I've heard nothing as far as LGA for 2021.
I'd say the good news is Minneapolis obviously needs their LGA and maybe even more for their police department, because it'd be tough to cut that at this time. But who knows? Does anybody else have a comment or thoughts? Dave Pritchett.
I have a couple comments. Whether the Parks Board decides to or not, I think is, unless I'm missing something, almost immaterial. It's not like we're going to have hockey rinks and baseball fields that aren't being used by the citizens of Brainerd and Brainerd area. It's just who's administering that. So I don't think that's not going to really factor into my decision as to whether we should go forward or not. My issue is we don't know what the future is going to look like. I was on this council when we were still recovering from years of not spending on capital improvement and had no money. I would like to know if we can move on with the hearing and that sort of stuff before committing to the money. I want to know what would be the pluses and minuses, the benefits and the harms of holding off on this project, and then make my decision.
Thank you. Who would best handle the pluses and minuses? I think of the minuses, the potentially the unknown of the county tax settlement to the city. Connie, any other worries?
It would just be, cash flow to be able to fund these projects. I think there is a way around it. We've worked through it in the past, so I'm concerned, but not overly concerned at this point. I mean, there's different things we can do. We can talk to BPU if we need to do some cash flow planning, that kind of stuff. But I think if we get our settlement, we should be fine. And especially if the parks project you're thinking about constructing in the fall of the year. So we would definitely have the money before we would need to construct. Those are the only, another minus would just be, we don't know what the future holds. We don't know what 2021 budget's going to look like. The advantage of is just that we could still, my recommendation would still be to hold the public hearing so we don't have to publish it again. I would still go ahead and do 8B. It's 8C that we need to hold off on if we're not sure we're going to be issuing the $1.3 million of debt for the tax abatements. Is that correct, Mr. Steinman?
Yeah, I would agree. If we held the public hearing, that is a required piece. If you took public comments, if you adopted the resolution, then that piece can get parked. That statutory requirement is completed. And then I mean, you have numerous options for selling these bonds. You can unlink the abatement bonds. You can delete the abatement bonds from this process and just go with equipment certificates and your improvement issue. There's a host of options there. So, but if we held the public hearing tonight, you adopted the resolution and then moved the next resolution, item C, out 2 weeks, that to give you folks some more time to discuss it, maybe that may be the best approach.
Thank you, Paul. I have a question, maybe for Alderman Bevins. So we hold the public hearing tonight and we push these bonds off 2 weeks to get a better sense of the Parks Department and if they want this project or what the cost of the project is. Even in 2 weeks, I imagine they're going to want the project because they have been working on it. So in 2 weeks, we're not going to have a clearer potential LGA cuts. We know the state budget is not looking good, but we don't know how they're going to balance it. So what does the 2 week wait buy us, Kelly?
Nothing.
Because, I mean, all of our concerns about long-term financial planning are and the unknowns. Those aren't going to be settled until we get there 1 year, 2 years, 3 years down the road. So I think we just need to decide if we want, Kelly, we just need to decide if we want the Memorial Park project.
I'm 100%. I started this whole conversation. I'm 100% behind this project and have that. It's disconcerting to me to have park board members stand in front of me and say they've never approved this project. Okay? Now, whether they have or they haven't, I can't answer that. Hold on. I can guarantee that no park board member has stood before this council and said, we want this project, fund us. I heard Mike Hagan stand before the council, but not a park board member. So I've heard park board members say, we don't want the parking lot and we're not sure we want this project. So it may not be true. I appreciate hearing again from Mayor Bedell and Parks Director Saylor. It has convinced me that what I originally said, this project should move forward. The other thing is, this is not a 12-month or a 24-month deal. This is a 50-year deal for the city of Brainerd. I said that with the parking lot, and I mean it with the park project. And whoever said that it's a moot, I think it was Alderman Pritchett, about which way we go with the Recs department, he's absolutely correct. It is for the benefit of the city and the quality of life that this project should go through. However, when it appears that there's hesitation on the park board, and I don't know that there is, and it appears that there might be some things happening in the state budgeting process, it's something we should discuss. But I, Mr. Chair, would move forward on all three issues tonight.
Any other thoughts, Kevin Stunick, Wayne Erickson?
I'll just say a couple things. To me, there's a lot of unknowns coming from the park board, like Kelly just said, and Dave just said, and some other of our constituents and stuff. I don't know if I'm comfortable going forward with all three. I'd be comfortable with approving the public hearing, which is B, and pushing the other two out a couple of weeks, but that's just my thoughts. We can't predict what LGA is going to do. We don't know, but that's every year we can say that.
Yeah. Wayne, did you have any thoughts?
No, I really don't. No.
Okay. Well, Tony, you had another thing to say?
Yes, thank you. The park board did go through 5 or 6 meetings with WSN to develop a conceptual plan for this. And also they unanimously approved me going out to seek RFPs for this project. And they also voted to have the special meeting tomorrow night to review the bids and I'm assuming select the company they want to go with.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Any other comments? Otherwise, I think it seems we're all comfortable holding the public hearing and adopting the resolution regarding the tax abatement, which is a necessary statutory step to borrow money for the park project. So if anybody's opposed to that, raise your hand. If not, right now at 8:50, I will open the public hearing. We will unmute the call-in users. Thank you. If you are a call-in user to talk about the proposed property tax abatement, please say your name. If you're here to talk about the proposed property tax abatement, please say your name. If you are here to talk about the proposed property tax abatement, please say your name. Seeing that nobody has spoken up, we will close the public hearing at 8:50, and I will hear a motion to adopt the resolution. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we adopt the proposed resolution approving property tax abatement related to infrastructure improvements in the city of Brainerd.
Lambert, second.
A motion by Bevins, a second by Lambert to adopt the resolution. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote.
T. Erickson,
Yes.
Lambert,
Yes.
Stunek,
Yes.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
W. Erickson,
Yes.
and Johnson.
That motion carries, and that brings us to the one we're not quite sure about, which is 8C, but I'll take a motion if somebody wants to throw one out. Kelly?
Let's do it. Let's see what happens. I move that we adopt the attached resolution providing for the issuance and sale of general obligation bonds series 2028 in the proposed aggregate principal amount of $3,880,000.
Lambert, second.
We have a motion by Bevins and a second with Lambert to issue the bonds this week. Is there any discussion? Or move forward with it this week at least? Any discussion?
Mr. President, I'll just mention, I'll support it. My earlier comments, I said, let's move forward with the hearing, the resolution, but maybe hold off on this. But, hearing from the parks liaison and Mr. Saylor, it sounds like the park board has made steps to move forward with it. So whether there's some members that are unsure about it, it sounds like from what I'm hearing, mostly the park board is wanting the project. So that assuages my concerns. So I just wanted to clarify my position, and I'll support it.
Thank you, Tad. And before I go to Kevin Stunek, perhaps our liaison could ask the park board president to make herself more visible around city council meetings so we can have some dialogue. But that's just a question. Kevin Stunek.
I'm just going to say I was uncomfortable with supporting all three, but listening to Mr. Saylor and our mayor and whoever he is, it's got so many titles, I don't know anymore. But I support it just because I think we need to move forward with it. And like Kelly said, this is a 50-year project. This isn't something that's going to go away in 6 months. So even though I was uncomfortable, I'll support it.
Mr. Chair,
Jan.
all I want to say, I will support this. I think it's for the best for the city. And in the long run, I think we'll be very, very pleased with that. So thank you.
Thank you. Wayne, you had something?
Yes, I agree. After listening here at the end to Mr. Saylor, it completely made me more comfortable. Thank you. I support you.
Thank you, Wayne. And yeah, I'll just say I also support the motion. I understand where former Mayor Menk is coming from, and there's just so much uncertainty. But I think it's important the kids have the hockey rinks. I think it's an important project we have moving forward in this city, and hopefully everything works out for the best for future state budgets and everything. But I support it. Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll vote by roll call.
T. Erickson,
Yes.
Lambert,
Yes.
Stunek,
Yes.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Bevins,
Yes.
W. Erickson,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Yes, that motion carries. Thank you for coming, Paul Steinman.
Thank you. We'll see you on the 6th of July. Thanks.
Thank you. That brings us to the next item on the agenda, number 9, public forum. Open that at 8:54. Please unmute the call-in users. If anybody is here to speak in public forum, please state your name. Anybody here for public forum? Anybody here for public forum? Hearing nobody, we'll mute the users and close the public forum and bring us to staff reports. And we'll start with Jennifer.
Nothing new to report, Mr. President.
Thank you. David Chansky has something.
Mr. President, it's got a few things. As council approved last week, the temporary extensions of premises. At this time, we have received 6 applications. Neary's Irish Pub, Brainerd Distillery, or 5 Rocks, Eagles, the Legion, Roundhouse, and Knotty Pine. At this point, pretty much everyone has gone through staff approval. What we are just waiting on are a few that we're just waiting on their certificates of liability, but otherwise they're all good to go. The small business relief grant, our staff started reviewing those applications today. We'll be bringing those, but since the EDA does have a meeting this upcoming Thursday, we're just going to bring those to the EDA board for ratification on Thursday. And then the last thing I have is a request to the city council. As you know, as part of the staff's recommendation to council as in reaction to COVID-19 was to move code compliance purely to complaint driven only. We did at that time say, if we start to see issues, we bring it back. At this time, we've gotten a lot of rain this spring, if you haven't noticed, a lot more than last year, and grass is starting to get long and long quickly. We've also gotten increased complaints about junk and debris, as well as our staff has been noticing some. So my request is from council would be authorization to let my staff start being proactive when it comes to grass and junk and debris only. The other property maintenance things, such as siding and roofs and things, we would still hold off on those things. So we're just looking for grass and junk and debris.
Do you have the capacity to handle that?
Yes, we do.
So I don't know if we need a motion. Is anybody opposed to him sending out his staff to police junk and debris and grass? I'm always opposed to it, but we'll let that aside for now. So yeah, move forward with that. Do you want a motion from us for that?
If there seems to be consensus, I think I'm good.
Okay, yeah, I think you're good.
And that's all I have, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. Any other staff updates, Connie?
Just a reminder that tomorrow at 5 o'clock, filings close to have your name on the ballot for council elections. Again, we have 6 positions that are open. So at 5 o'clock tomorrow is the deadline to get your name on the ballot.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, Mr. President. I touched on this on my director's report, but our virtual programming is up and running on the city website, and I'd like to commend Recreation Coordinator Katie Kaufman and our Parks intern Joe Pfeiffer for what I think is just an excellent job. And if I may, could I ask if Katie could talk about the virtual programming a little bit, people in?
Absolutely, Katie. Let us know all about it.
Hi, everyone. With everything going on regarding our normal recreation programming, we, as a department, decided we needed to do something that got all of our community in our parks and recreating. So we decided to design some virtual programming that would be helpful in this time, especially when we were during the quarantine phase. So we have 3 coloring contests. We have Catch of the Day, where people can report their fish that they catch at Rice Lake, part of Lum Park. We have a photography contest that will hopefully implement a photo for our activity guide next year. The winner would get that. cover shot. And then we've also developed some practice plans for sports that families could do together at home. We've started to create a community-wide scavenger hunt that gets people into our parks and learning about our parks and what it has to offer. We created some kids activity packets. We will start doing some playground workout challenges that we might be utilizing YouTube or TikToks. I guess that's what's cool with kids these days. We've also organized on Wednesday, we're going to start doing drone virtual tours of our parks. So we're coordinating that with the fire department and hopefully moving forward with that. We think that would be a great benefit to the community to be able to see what our parks look like, what it has to offer, with not even having to go tour it themselves. We've also partnered with the YMCA, not necessarily fiscally by any means, but we offer a place where people can be doing the fitness challenge, the community fitness challenge. And I guess if you sign up, you get a free t-shirt. So that's something to look into. We've also started TED Talks, some book recommendations, some meditation, and then vision boards for people that want to learn or grow during this time. And then a couple other ideas we've had. We have the Brainerd Parks Nature Club. This was a new page that we created to help educate, get families into our parks, learning. And then, so our first activity is a Where's Waldo Bird Edition. So what we would ask is people come into our parks and they take a picture of the different types of birds they see, and then we can kind of start it would just be an ongoing thread of different birds people are seeing in our parks. And it's kind of a learning activity as well, because they're starting to identify what parts of the bird and what colorings, and helps them learn about different bird species. And then we have a pine cone art where we've invited the public to come and pick up pine cones and then show us our artistic skills of what kind of pine cone art they can create. And then lastly, we're doing a Brainerd Trails and Parks Cleanup Day. So that's just to help unite, whether it's families or service clubs or whoever, everyone's welcome to help clean up. And then they want to take a picture and we'll post it on social media and do a big hurrah, hurrah, and it helps the community and pay it forward type motivation. So, and then the last thing, we haven't uploaded this online yet, but we're still in the brainstorming stages. We're thinking about doing some kind of dog park guest book. So where they would take a picture of their dog and we'd have like a giant inventory of all the dogs that have come to our dog park. So those are just some of our ideas, and that's where we're going. So trying to be as creative as we possibly can in this time where we're kind of, our hands are kind of chained and we don't really know where we're going, but we want to still be able to offer the community something and get people into our parks.
Thank you, Katie. Those sound like some really, really neat programming. Tad?
Yeah, so Katie, thanks for sharing all this. That's a lot of stuff, and it's awesome to see. So, and these are some of the things like I hope to see carry forward, obviously through this kind of crisis time, because there's several of those things that can obviously be done no matter what. And so it's very cool to see, and kind of that culture building or character building throughout the city. So very cool.
Comments or questions of Katie? Jan?
All I want to say is fantastic, and I appreciate everything you guys are doing. Thank you.
Kelly? You're muted. You're muted, Kelly.
Thank you. Katie, is the scavenger hunt for kids or adults or both?
It'll be for everyone.
Okay.
My 7-year-old will beat you though, Kelly.
Talk is cheap, Gabe.
Any other comments, Kevin?
We're all kids at heart, but excellent job, you guys.
Mr. President?
Yep.
This This is phenomenal. I wish we would have had this kind of activity when my kids were growing up. This is fantastic. Good job.
Excellent. Anything else from the Parks Department?
I want to see Kelly walk on that pole.
You and me, pal, you and me. You're gonna be the one in the yellow.
There is only one color, red.
All right.
Tim, you have an update?
Yeah, just a quick update if I could. On Friday, we received, or the incident management team that I'm part of, received a request to assist down at the civil unrest down in the Minneapolis area. After talking with Administrator Bergman, I went down there Friday, worked Friday, and then also Saturday, and returned home Saturday. So I just want to say thank you for the support on that. And the experience was really good. Bring back a lot of things. Hopefully I'll share with everyone at a later date, just on the lessons learned for sure out of this. And it's continuing. They're going to staff. I was at the multi-agency coordination center, which was based out of the TCF stadium. And they are requesting to staff that all week. So they are anticipating the problems to continue as we speak. So again, just thanks for the support to be able to participate in that and learn from those experiences.
Yeah, Tim, thanks for doing that. I think you responding to hurricanes and floods and civil unrest just provides such a wealth of experience for you to bring back to the city, that all of them are disaster related that you don't want to have to deal with, but with you in the city, we have experience and knowledge on how to manage some certain situations, and I think that's just invaluable. Jan.
Mr. Chair, and this might be not the right thing to ask, but Tim, is it brought on a lot by outside personnel that is causing a lot of our unrest? Do you get the sense in Minneapolis? Or is it just a hotbed all the way around?
I don't know for sure that it's a lot of outside. I just think there's a lot of stuff going on in the cities, and as you can see throughout the United States and the world. So I don't know what their numbers are for the number of people that came into that to cause problems versus the ones that were there. I think one of the big takeaways that I took out of it is the importance of training together with your other agencies, whether it's police, fire, sheriff's office, police department. They reached out to all counties around them, and I just think it's important to have a relationship with all of those people involved before something like this happens. So when you're in the same room together, you know that you're all talking about the same thing and understand things the same. And so the experience that way was good. As far as who was the problem, I think that's probably will be determined later.
Okay, thank you.
Mr.
Novels will be written about it. Wayne Erickson.
Tim, thank you for going, because you give Brainerd a good name. You make us look good. Thank you so much for going.
Tad.
Very much.
I just wanted to add my 2 cents on that too. Thanks, Tim, for going, bringing that wealth of experience, not only for yourself, but back to the city, and glad you stayed safe. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments to the fire chief? Seeing none, we will move on. Thanks again, Tim and Paul. I think you had some updates.
Yeah, you can go and get a haircut for the first time in about 3 or 4 months. So I know I went and got a haircut today, and I know Dave Bedeau, he was, the mayor was commenting about how good his hair looked right now. So
Mr. Chansky had gotten
your local barbers and hairdressers.
Lucky you, Paul. I couldn't get in till Wednesday. Any other staff updates? Seeing none. To council, we'll just go over starting with, or no, we go mayor before council. Mayor's update.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Cue the music there, Dave Pritchett. Get that theme music going. In jest again, I'm sorry. Real quick before I mention anything, we had talked about perhaps the including the park board president more. I know that last year or the year before, I think it was last year, we started to ask the park board president to present their budget each year. It may not be a terrible idea to just ask that from time to time we are getting an update. I know I myself can speak for them, but sometimes it's good to have their board president speaking as well, especially right now. Because like I said, there's a scenario where that group is trying to find their way, and they're trying to figure out where the park board sits within our charter and what their responsibilities and what their regulations are. Let's say it that way. So that might not be a terrible idea. But what I really want to speak of is that I was invited to attend a vigil for George Floyd on Saturday night at Gregory Park by Pastor Leslie with the First Congressional United Church of Christ. Really nice event. And while attending, I was very moved by some words that she had to say, specifically her words that we as white Americans are very quick to try and find comfort when things happen that make us uncomfortable. And one of the messages that she had was, change doesn't happen when you're not uncomfortable. And what she really urged people to do is to not be so quick to move on from those uncomfortable feelings, not be so quick to move in directions to try and find that peace or that comfortability. Living in a little bit of discomfort is sometimes good. It's good for us to, as a group, feel some pain every once in a while. And what I want to say is that it's really important right now that we allow ourselves to exist in that discomfort, and that it's important that we support one another as we find our way to fix the problems that continue to plague us. So politics aside, I thought those were really strong words, and it was an interesting take on it that I was moved by. You know, that uncomfortability is good from time to time, and change will not happen unless we allow ourselves to be uncomfortable. So I just want to say thank you to Leslie and everyone that was at that event. It was a fairly large group of people, and there was no animosity or anger or anything within that group. It was just a very calm group that had gathered there to, oddly enough, comfort one another and show support as a community. So I just want to thank everyone that was at that event, and specifically thank Leslie, one, for her words, but also for reaching out and inviting me to that event.
All right. Can you hear me? Okay, good. I'm missing like half the people on my screen, but we'll go with the people I can see, and we'll start with Dave Pritchett.
All right, I don't have a whole lot to say, but one thing that makes me proud to be a resident of Brainerd is, while my siblings down in the city were kind of worried about where it was going to go, and on the next day, many of them were in their cities in St. Paul, Minneapolis, cleaning up. Walks in the evening and waving at passersby and waving back, and people in their cars, and there's people protesting and expressing their views and their grief and their sorrows, and no violence. So it makes me proud to be a resident of this area.
Thank you. Jan?
Nothing more to say. Oh, I should say that I've been talking to some bar owners, and even though they are not going to be opening under our resolution that we've done, they do appreciate all the city is trying to do for the bars and restaurant businesses. So thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Kelly Bevins?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I also was at the Vigil for Peace on Saturday night, and echo Mr. Pritchett's sentiments about how well controversy's been handled in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. So now I'm to people who I can't see on my screen, and I'll call you out and see if you're there. Kevin Stunek?
I'm here. How are you?
Yeah, let's hear your update.
I don't have much to update other than everybody try to stay safe because we're going through some struggling times.
Thank you, Kevin. Tad Erickson?
Yeah, just a really brief update from me about the Northland Arboretum. We had the board of directors meeting last week, and they were have been down a couple board members, had some vacancies. They were never in jeopardy of not having a quorum by any means, but they've been adding folks to their board member list. And last meeting, they added Mr. Dan Lee. And now they're actually up to 11 members. And then plus with their 2 ex officios, myself being one, and then also from Baxter, Daryl Olson, the total 13. So like I said, never in jeopardy of not having a quorum, but they did have some vacancies and they've been adding to their roles. So, but also just slowly in the process of reopening as we all are. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Tad. Wayne Erickson.
I have just heard about a number of churches that are looking forward to open on Sunday at the governor's request of 25%, but they're just glad to be open. They're just glad to open the doors, get back to some normalcy. So that's been exciting to hear. And I think it's been long overdue, and the community is looking forward to moving in that direction. So that's a real positive. And our restaurants are looking to get open, and I see a number of them putting tables out, taking part of their parking lots and getting open. I don't know how that's going to work, but I'm excited to see them open again. And the Brainerd residents have really been supportive on this very first day. So it's exciting to see. That's it.
Thank you, Wayne. I assume you can all hear me still. I have a couple items. One is the HRA held their interviews. They had a candidate they liked. We have extended a job offer. We're still negotiating, but we're pretty confident it's going to work out and we're going to have an executive director in place finally, almost 6 months later. Second item, you may feel a bit of deja vu at the next meeting. When we got the dog hearing people request to have us look at it, I was reviewing it and I found that we didn't actually make a council determination, which our ordinances say we must do. So we're going to throw that back on the agenda on June 15th, where the council can hear the testimony and make the determination that we're required to make per our ordinances. And then I want to just on the protests we've had in this community and how great they've been. I just want to say I heard from Jennifer Bergman that there was some protests Thursday night, and the protesters were peaceful. But on Friday they called Corky because apparently somebody was bugging them. So they asked Corky to send a police officer down to just stand with the protesters, and everything worked out better that night. And finally, to follow up on Wayne's houses of worship opening, I'm very excited. I think that will help our community and our state in finding comfort and finding healing. And I'm excited to actually meet my 2-month-old nephew who's getting baptized on Sunday. I haven't even held him yet. So it's an exciting time. Anything else to come before the city council tonight? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Lambert, so moved.
And Lambert, let's vote by roll call.
T. Erickson,
Yes.
Lambert,
Yes.
Stunek,
Yahoo, yes.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
W. Erickson,
Yes.
and Johnson.
Yes, motion carries. We're adjourned. We'll see you all later.
Have a great night.
Everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks.